And what are some of the risks associated with not having cybersecurity measures in place within these practices?
So I think the biggest issue we see is this. The doctors have an IT company and they see that blinking firewall sitting on the shelf. And every morning they see their little symbol of their antivirus software in the bottom right hand corner of their screen. And they're like, oh, I'm protected. I'm good. And you know what? Maybe I even asked my IT person, am I protected from ransomware? And they're like, oh, doctor, of course you are. We're great at this. You have the best firewall. You have the best antivirus software. You're good. And they're surgeons and they are trusting of that information. But the reality is every single ransomware attack we've dealt with in the healthcare space, and we do a lot of these, everyone's had a firewall and everyone's had antivirus software. And this was the technology that has been used for years to protect these practices. But the reality is it just isn't effective anymore, right? And the problem is, just like procedures change over time and doctors change their methodologies and science changes, so does information technology and security. That has to change as well. And what we see way too often is the IT companies are still building these networks the same way they built them in 2016 and 2017. The hackers go out and buy the same firewalls that are in the doctor's offices, the same antivirus software. They figure out how to bypass them. So what practitioners have to do now is they have to implement a multi-layered security approach, which is what cybersecurity firms do. They come in, they identify all the weaknesses in the network. We like to call them, in layman's terms, unlocked doors and windows, right? These are the entry points that hackers use to gain access to your system, whether it's electronic, right? They're hacking in, or even a human, right? They're trying to trick, the person at the front desk to give them access. So what the practitioners need to do is they have to start understanding that they have to implement this multi-layered approach, the antivirus software, the firewalls, and then use a cybersecurity company to run very sophisticated tests, deploy very sophisticated tools on the network to identify how hackers can break in and then lock those doors. And when you take this holistic approach, this multi-layered approach, you actually have a very effective, real cybersecurity solution, not something that feels good or looks good, something that's actually effective. And that's the mindset that has to occur. And what I tell all my healthcare clients is cybersecurity and IT is very much like the information, or very much like the medical world, right? There are generalists like a GP or an internist, and then there's the specialist, i.e. like a plastic surgeon, and they serve very different purposes. Are they both doctors? Absolutely. And in the cyber world, it's the same thing. The IT companies are kind of like the generalists. They keep the computers running, do basic security. And then cybersecurity companies come in as specialists and harden these networks and protect them. So that's what they have to do. They have to adapt to the new tactics that these hackers are deploying.
And off of that, what are the ramifications of this data being leaked? Why do cyber criminals want anything to do with this information?
I mean, the ramifications are pretty significant. So you have state regulatory issues, for the release of that information. And then obviously the big one is HIPAA. I mean, if that information is released, stolen, whatever it might be, accessed, this is a significant violation of the HIPAA laws. And guess what? The criminals know this too, right? They get it. And that's why healthcare is being targeted, to, basically damage our country during what's going on right now with the pandemic. And secondly, they are taking a tremendous amount of money out of our healthcare system because of these ransom demands. And I will tell you from our experience, a very, very high percentage of the practices are forced to pay the ransom. So these criminals are making billions of dollars a year, on US interest because people are paying. They have no choice because the data's taken or it's all been encrypted, including all the backups, the cloud technology, et cetera. And that's why it is so effective.